Hello, hello, and welcome to season 2, episode 3 of the Dateable AF podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about identity. Am I losing myself or just growing up? And looking at how our identity shifts in long term relationships and how to find your way back to yourself.
Well, at the age of 65, I hope I'm not just growing up. I think
You think you're already full grown?
probably not.
Still working on it. Well, I think that sometimes we find ourselves looking in the mirror mid relationship and thinking, who am I anymore? And if you've ever felt like that, you're not alone. So, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how those long term relationships can blur your sense of self and how to tell the difference between losing yourself and just growing up. We are going to break down why this happens, what the warning signs are, and how to reconnect with the parts of you that might have gotten lost in the shuffle. So, spoiler alert, you don't have to choose between being in love and being yourself.
Yeah, I have so many examples that I could share throughout this podcast. I'm going to have to pick and choose my Moniques and Veronicas wisely.
Well, do share.
One thing I would like to do before I jump in, because I do have a personal story that I don't mind launching into, but I would like to sort of underpin this with a little bit of researchy thought, because when you think about your identity and how you form your identity as it relates to being in a relationship, developing throughout a relationship, and going, the long distance with somebody, and we're going to talk a lot about that today and why it works and why it doesn't, and the shifts and turns. The one thing that I feel like is interesting to be aware of throughout this conversation is us as queer women, is that our identities and the way we formulate that is based on, typically as you grow up, what's around you. And so you see your parents and you see how they navigate their relationship throughout time. And then you see their friends, or you see other people dating and looking at the pros and cons of what you like or you don't like about those things, whether or not they were a couple that experienced independence and they were able to grow and develop together, or they were doing everything together and that didn't feel good. But I think you take little snippets of that along the way as you grow up and into what you decide you think you should be or can be as you start developing relationships yourself. And so the one thing that is in play for us, and especially women our age, is that we did not have those examples of lesbian couples. So our framework was all through the eyes of heterosexual couples. And then we're going to talk about this today, that there are some definite nuances that are specific to women trying to journey together in long-term relationships.
Lots of differences. We were talking just before we started today about the fact that heterosexual couples have, guys' weekends or girls' weekends. And what do you do if your partner's a girl? That you're going to go out to girls' night with your friends. Well, why isn't your partner included? And that causes some issues for couples because if it's divided by gender, of course your husband doesn't want to come along to girls' night. That would be weird. Or of course you don't want to come along to, guys' poker night or whatever. But when your partner is a woman, it gets a little tricky.
And I have a personal story. I will just be Monique and Veronica in this situation. Is my life, but
yes, let's hear it.
That we absolutely had friendships. There were friendships you bring into the relationship. Oftentimes, if you're good at holding on to friendships, you have these long-term friendships. Oftentimes for us, those are female friendships. Oftentimes those are lesbian relationships. And then you bring those in. And then I was in a situation where then I had been spending independent time with those women for years. Two of those women in particular, where we carve off time to be together, just the three of us, because that we've been sharing history together for almost 40 years. And that there was an assumption in my relationship that all of a sudden that was always time to be spent together. That there was there was no longer a separation of, oh, you want to go out and it's your time to be just with them. Why would you want to do that? I mean, they're my friends too, and I hang out with them and we do things together. Why wouldn't we do this together? And it was just very difficult for me. As a matter of fact, that person never, ever understood it.
Interesting. What do you think it was that made her think that you should do everything together?
Because she had always done everything together. She had always seen her parents do everything together. And she had always done everything together with her previous partner. And they had always shared their friends in that way. And so she just didn't know otherwise.
Just had no examples for it. I'm going to say, as a therapist, that you should have separate time from your partner. It's good for you. It's good for the relationship because you bring back interesting things to talk about. If you're together 24/7, you don't have anything to talk about at the end of the day because you experienced everything together. So let yourself have that. If you're in a relationship, give yourself time to do things without your partner.
We talked about this on the podcast. I think maybe it was our last episode. We touched on it a little bit, but this is really, again, this is a unique thing to queer women's relationships, is that our friend groups oftentimes are other, lesbians. And so that emotional bond can be frightening to be confident to allow that to happen.
Do you think it's because the partner is worried that there's something romantic, or do you think it's FOMO? What do you think it is that causes that dynamic?
I've seen it be all the above. I have witnessed partners not having that for themselves. And so they want to be in that energy with you because they've not done a good job of cultivating that in their own and keeping that for themselves. And I've seen just as we talked about, Natalie Merchant's jealousy. Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I think that is true. And for some reason, in women's relationships in particular, it's just difficult for people to sort of manage their routines, manage their social circles, because like you said, it's a common group of women, and often those people are friends of both partners. And so it is hard to carve off that time, and it's hard to kind of keep your own life and your own goals.
And we discussed the idea, there's that feeling in the beginning when you partner with somebody that you want to share all those things. You want your friends to meet your person, and you want to take them around, and you want to expose them to your life. And that's normal. And I think it's when you start settling into the routine, when you start, again, moving into sort of some normalcy in your life, that people can struggle. And
yes, for sure.
Because they think it's supposed to stay the same. And naturally it really doesn't.
No, it's an ever-changing dynamic. I know I talked about this on an earlier episode, but I was in a relationship one time with someone named Monique. I think you might have met her. And when we first started dating, I had a routine of running with my friends at the lake every Saturday morning. And when there's a part of this that is normal, when you start dating someone new, you do want to spend a lot of time with them. You're kind of getting to know them, and you're head over heels, and you want to spend a lot of time together. So I skipped my run. For, I don't know, probably a good 2 months. I didn't really get up on Saturday mornings and go run with my friends. And then when I did again, the person I was dating was taken aback. They're like, "Where are you going?" Because she didn't realize that I had that routine prior to being with her. And so that was just a way that I didn't do a very good job of maintaining that piece of my life. And it made it more difficult later on to go back and pick it up. I wish I had just kind of kept it going from the beginning.
That is also one of those times where you have to go ahead and speak up. And that can be hard to do because in the beginning, you don't want to argue about it. You don't want to have to put a stake in the ground. And oftentimes you just give up and go, I'll just stay in bed another morning. What difference does it make? And the next thing you look up and you have none of your hobbies. You're not participating. You're not seeing your friends. It's common.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that for women in particular, but couples in general, go through this sort of loss of autonomy when they start dating someone. And you shift from thinking, what do I want, to what do we want? And while you should, of course, be considerate of the person that you're in a relationship with, you can't completely lose yourself and lose what you want in this, or you're going to end up being really resentful later on.
Yeah, you will be. And that, unfortunately, sometimes it takes, that can be a slow burn. And then it takes a while for that to set in. And then you look up and you are already deeply invested in someone. You maybe moved in with them. You've done all these things. And you look up and you go, where am I in this?
Yeah.
And then you begin to second guess yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the dangerous part of this as well is that you think, well, it's okay. This is just a part of coupling, and I can do this. I'm fine. I'm getting most of what I need, and it's okay.
Yes. And I think that there are some common signs that you might be losing yourself. One of them was something that you just mentioned, and that is that you stop doing hobbies that you love. So, maybe you used to play poker with your friends every Friday night, and now you don't do that anymore because that's not what you do when you're partnered. So you give that up and you start second guessing your own preferences. Maybe you like a particular kind of food that your partner doesn't like, so you don't go get that food anymore. Or another sign is that if you have a hard time being alone, if you feel disoriented, or if you feel resentful when your partner goes out and does something and you're home alone, that's a sign that you might be losing yourself. Like, why don't you have activities that are keeping you busy while your partner's busy?
The thing that's tricky about this is both in the dating phase and then in the relationship phase, is that in the dating phase, I do think, and you can speak more clearly to this, that there is a natural time where you are supposed to not just be looking at yourself, but looking at yourself in the relationship.
For sure.
And that if you've been alone and haven't partnered in a while or whatever, that there's a natural order to beginning to not see everything that you do just through the lens of how you've done it as an individual. And you move into the relationship, you're figuring out how all that works within the relationship.
Yes. And so,
yeah,
there's definitely room for compromise. You don't want to put your stake in the ground and refuse to move it. And I think that can go too far and it can become self-abandonment.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I was in the research, there's actually not a lot of research out there on this topic specifically. I mean, they're all different tangential things that are attached to it. But one of the things that I was reading, and I really, it caught my attention, I think it's something healthy to think about, is when we think about as we're in the relationship and you get to the point where you're thinking, I'm still an individual in here, and there are things that I want out of this and places I want to go and things I want to do that aren't necessarily attached to this person that I love and I still want to be with, is that we tend to focus on all of the things that are the same in us, and that sends us a signal that things are good, and that is not necessarily good. And that when we begin to notice all the differences, we assume that is bad. And that the idea is that at the point at which you can really enjoy one another's differences is when you continue to grow into interesting people together.
I love that idea. I hadn't really thought about it from this angle, but that seems really true. And what's at the bottom of that is security. If you're secure within yourself, then it's easy to appreciate the things that are different about your partner.
And we've talked a bit about being curious and them bringing stuff to the table. I think we're at this place where we were really talking about noticing the evolution of getting there. And that is that leap you make from being consumed with one another to then individuating, I guess, and then beginning to actually get excited about the growth you're seeing in your person and the growth that hopefully they get excited about what they see in you, and that they're bringing new energy, that new adventure, that, additional curiosity in. And I think there's this other example they gave that really I just thought it was very clear, is that women tend to mirror one another so differently than a male and a female do. And so, we just naturally tend to look in the mirror and we're like this, that we see so much sameness. We expect a lot of sameness. We expect the nurturing. We expect the caretaking. We expect all these things that are sort of built into this, the expectations of a woman. And we're looking at one another, and when we don't necessarily see all the sameness, it scares us. And we think something's wrong. In reality, we're just beginning to stop looking at ourselves stop looking at trying to create the exact same image of ourselves and becoming who we are as an individual. Anyway, it's all sort of deep.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because thinking about if you're in a relationship with someone who's the opposite sex from you, then you might attribute differences to those gender differences. But if it's two women in a relationship, if your partner is the same as you, then that's great. And if they're different than you, then it would be easy to think one of you was wrong. Either you needed to shift to mirror her, or she needs to shift to mirror you. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
What you're saying. And I think women, we also get taught to be the supportive one. And so if we're constantly thinking about how can I support my partner's activities or hobbies or what she wants to do, I think that is one of the ways that we start to lose ourselves, is by identifying too much with being the supportive person.
And I will tell my audience right now that this topic, not only am I right now, I'm traveling pretty heavily in my analytical brain. And so, and this topic is very juicy, and it's like a big T-bone steak for my analytical brain. So bear with me as I travel through this topic, because I'm very intrigued by it from an analytical standpoint. But the other piece of this is just, there's some things that we know exist, like being enmeshed in early love, which we've touched on. Would you call that limerence phase?
Yeah. Yes. Limerence is that phase where it's what we describe as being in love, and you want to spend every second with that person, and you're texting them all the time, and you're discovering things about each other. And it's such a chemical high. And that's a perfectly normal stage to go through at the beginning. You have to be really mindful of not losing yourself when you're in that stage.
Yeah. That's a powerful drug, and it's tough, I think, to come down off that drug.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the phase too, where you're starting to develop this shared identity as a couple, like not just who am I, but who are we together? And sometimes it's easy to let go of parts of yourself as you're doing that. So it requires a lot of mindfulness.
Taking this back to dating, because I do think that there are some great opportunities to explore another person's capacity in this area as you're dating before you fully commit to a relationship. I think that you can actually stay in that dating phase, and maybe you should stay. That's a reason to date often. And you can speak to this, but have a lot of dates, because it gives you a chance to test out this idea of whether or not this person has the ability to move from that phase that they have other resources at their fingertips that they feel comfortable separating and then coming back together, that they can go out and then they can come back in.
Yes. And I think women tend to maybe not do that as well. So we just want to go in and be all in, and we forget that it's sometimes helpful to go back out. I don't know if you have listened to Michelle Obama's podcast, but she has this fabulous podcast that she's doing with her brother. It's called MIO, like In My Opinion, with Michelle Obama and Craig Robinson. And she was talking last week about giving her daughters dating advice. And the one bit of advice that she said for that she told them to date a lot. She said, stay open to people, get a lot of experience out there, because then when your person shows up, you know what you want. And if you haven't really had any experience, if you've only ever eaten at one restaurant, then you don't really know if the food's good there or not. But if you've eaten at 100 restaurants, you know when you eat some really good food. And I think that was the point she was making with dating, was if you've had a lot of experience with a lot of different people, you know how to compare them to each other. And then when the person who's right for you actually shows up, you recognize it.
I have a lot to say about Michelle Obama.
Girl, me too.
The first thing I'm going to say about that was I sure wish that I had an opportunity to meet her before Barack, because I would have liked to have been a part of her dating journey.
I know. If she just had that one comp value, you could have been the president instead of Barack.
Thank you. Yes, I know. I feel like I lost in that deal. So the other piece of this that she did talk about in that was when she saw him, his physical characteristics did not necessarily catch her attention at first, because he was kind of geeky and didn't look like, and I'm guessing that she had dated some very, very handsome fellows.
I would imagine.
And that it wasn't until she talked to him on the phone and then became very intrigued with the conversations they were having.
Yep. That was the sexy part of him, was his brain and his conversation. Can we just take a little side moment to talk about Michelle Obama's arms?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
She has the most amazing arms.
Oh.
I wonder if she would want to come on the Dateable AF podcast and talk to us about her arms and her dating. I'd like to just throw that out there, Michelle. If you're listening, we would love to have you as a guest on our podcast.
And we would try not to publicly covet you so much like we are right now if you came on a podcast. We try, and then we do have a uniform. If you can see, we show our arms here, so we would expect you to wear this uniform.
Of course. For those of you who are just listening and not watching us on YouTube, we showed up online with the exact same black tank top and black glasses on today. Twins.
That's right. If I didn't have white hair, then she might not know the difference right now.
That's right. All lesbians look alike.
That's right. And we all know each other. There's that too.
This is true. I remember my mom would be like, my friend Sylvia has a daughter named Lisa. Do you know her? And I'd be like, no, Mom, I don't know Lisa. Well, she's gay. I was like, oh, well, we don't all know each other, despite what you might think.
I think we do. Although I will say that I continue to have some hilarious, I feel like right now, and I can't go into great detail about all this, but I feel like that I am living the star chart, Alice's star chart from the L Word.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
You got a lot of crossover going on?
Oh, my God. You would not believe all of that.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about in my personal activities.
Dating pictures.
But
just people who know other people, who might know some other people who might be dating you or someone else.
Wow is all I'm going to say.
Oh, too bad my mom's not around. I could find out what Sylvia's daughter Lisa. Maybe she wants to go out with you.
I probably met her. She may be dating my neighbor.
Exactly.
Oh, she
This
could
big
be
small
she could be
world out
dating
there.
anyone on my block here over on Gay Gillis. There's no
That's
telling.
right.
There's an assortment. So,
There's a requirement to live on Rachel Street that you got to be gay.
oh my God. All right. So,
All right, back to our topic.
oh my God.
Now that we got distracted by Michelle Obama's arms. Oh boy. So, what do you think happens with this identity piece when one person in the relationship is growing or evolving and the other person's kind of protesting for things to stay the same?
I think it causes a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I think that it's in some ways almost feels like a zero-sum game, because the person who's growing has if the other person's not growing with them, then they're usually going to want to hold them in. They're going to want to keep them in that safety zone and keep the things the way they've been. Or they're going to see anything external as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And so the person who's naturally needing to grow and stretch has to make a choice. They're going to either have to say, hey, you're going to have to let me do this, or I'm going to leave. And the other person's then stuck in a decision. It just seems like I'm either going to have to decide that I'm going to grow too, allow them to grow, or get the hell out. I don't know. You're the therapist, but it just seems like a zero-sum game to me.
I do see this a lot, especially when one partner's starting therapy and the other person has not been to therapy, because therapy is such a cool journey of growth and self-discovery, and people really dive into it and start to shift the way they communicate. They start to shift the way they view the world. And if the partner isn't also therapy savvy or has not been in therapy, that can be really scary and threatening. They feel like they're going to lose that person.
I have lived it, absolutely lived it. And that, with very big things happening in my life at a key time when I was experiencing some huge growth in my life, and my person was not coming along on that at all. And all they could think of was, a bunch of people that I don't know, and I'm scared about it.
Yeah. Instead of being happy for you and seeing that you're genuinely happy. So this goes back to the point that we've emphasized over and over, that if you focus on becoming your best self, then you're not so worried about what someone else is doing. And so in this case, the partner who's not in therapy or who's not going out and growing isn't really focused on being their best self. And that insecurity is driving the relationship problems.
I think this is a good question that we have in our prompt is, if your partner disappeared for a month, how would you fill your time?
That's such a good question. Would you panic at the idea of being alone for a month? Would you revel in the idea of being alone for a month? I know that with Joe and me, whenever one of us travels, we both will have a day or two where we're just like, woohoo, dancing around the house. Like, I got the house to myself. And then after a few days, we miss each other and we're like, I'm ready for you to come home now. If we had a whole month, well, we actually have had a month apart. When earlier in our relationship, I was doing retreats in Tulum before we moved to Mexico. And I would go down and host a retreat, and then I would stay after. And I'd be gone for about a month. And it was good. It provided lots of opportunities for growth. And we also missed each other, which I think was a good thing.
That's a nice balance. I think that if you did that, and the whole month, or whatever aspect of that, whatever part of that month, all you were doing was pining away for one another, and you reflected back on that, and it just felt miserable, and you just, you don't ever want to do it again, then I think that's unfortunate. Mm-hmm. If what I do think is healthy is that you missed each other in a healthy way. Like, you couldn't wait to see each other, but I doubt very seriously, knowing both of you, that you reflect back on that and you think, oh my God, I hated it.
No, neither of us did. And it was interesting because it was also at a time when Tulum was not as developed as it is now, and we didn't have great phone service. So the place where I was staying didn't have phone service. So if I wanted to talk to her, I had to get in my car and drive into town where I got a phone signal. So it wasn't like we could even be texting or talking on the phone a lot. And so we had a lot of downtime and a lot of apart time, and it made us really appreciate each other more. And we had so much to talk about by the time we came back together.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that can happen in that space. And also, this made me think about, there are couples out there that I've known, especially older couples, who have never spent a night apart, and they it's worked for them. They've been together for years, and it's what they love, and they stimulate one another in that works. And so I don't think this is a right and wrong way. If you actually want to be with your person like that, you just have to match with somebody who also really sees themselves growing only with you. And I really think that there are not a lot of people that can pull that off and be happy, but there are some. And maybe some of our folks out there will weigh in on this. But I do believe that it's, if you are a person who needs some autonomy, you know that you want some personal growth, you don't want everything to be about what you're doing with your partner, then doing things like being separated for a month is a cool thing to do.
Yeah, or even a week. It doesn't have to be a whole month. You said there's not a right or wrong, and I agree with that. I don't want to put a judgment on it, but you have to think about what would happen if something happened to the person, or if something happened to your relationship. You don't want to be someone who can't function without your partner, because that feels dangerous. You're going to be in a mess of trouble, because not only would you be grieving the loss of that person or grieving the loss of that relationship, you also would have trouble just functioning in the day-to-day. So I do think that there is something positive about having autonomy and being able to survive on your own.
Yes, I'm trying to feel, I feel pretty opinionated about this topic. And then, so I'm trying to stay somewhere in the middle every now and then around it. But you're right. I think not being able to self-soothe and know that no matter what happens, you can find your space and be okay in the world. If you don't feel sure about that, that is a scary place to be.
Yeah, because you don't want to feel like you would just shrivel up and, cease to exist without this person. So as you're growing in your relationships, there are a couple of questions to ask yourself. If you kind of look at where you were before the relationship, and you look at where you are mid-relationship, you should ask yourself, do I like who I'm becoming? Do you like your today self better than you liked your before this relationship self? And if the answer is no, what do you need to change so that you like who you're becoming again?
That's a great question.
I think another thing that you can ask is, when do I feel most like myself? There is a book that I read recently by Martha Beck, and it's called The Way of Integrity. And the premise of the book is that when you're in alignment, you feel it. It's like everything just clicks into place. And she's not talking about integrity as far as like right or wrong. She's talking about integrity as being aligned with yourself. And I think if you ask, when do I feel most like myself, when things are in line. And if you're being dragged out to do activities that you don't like, or you're tagging along with your partner to hang out with her friends and they're not really your people, you're probably not feeling a whole lot like yourself. And so what do you need to do to get back to feeling like yourself again?
We talk about this often, that we say yes to things that, it's a balancing act of saying yes to things that don't support that alignment that you're talking about. And that you do in your relationship with somebody, you do say yes to things sometimes that you don't want to do, but you also have to know when you don't need to say yes to something. And I think you and Joe actually have a system around that. That's pretty, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we've probably talked about this on the pod before, but we have a deal where, let's take an event like a family reunion, that most of the time it's not that fun to attend someone else's family reunion, or let's say high school reunion. That's even worse. Like no one wants to come to my high school reunion unless they went to my high school. So we have a deal that we get to opt out of those things. We can say, no, don't want to come to that. On the flip side of that, there are times when maybe one of us needs a wingman. And like, I feel nervous going into this situation. I know this isn't going to be fun for you, but I need you to take one for the team and come along. And we're both really good about that, at letting each other opt out if it doesn't seem fun, and speaking up when we really need that person to show up. You can't call in that favor every single time.
Yeah, right.
Because then you end up being joined at the hip. It's like, no, I really need you to come to this. Well, you can't need your partner to come to every single thing with you. That, then it loses its,
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
You're missing the point of the activity when that happens. There's another red flag that I wanted to throw out, and that is when you're in dating is a good time to spot it. Certainly in a relationship is if you look up and you have lost or you're not connected to friends that you've been connected to, all of a sudden you don't have space for them in your life anymore. Not because of anything that you haven't had a disagreement. They just don't fit into your new life because your person doesn't want them around, because your person doesn't like them, because they don't, that whatever it is, you feel uncomfortable having those friendships now because they don't fit with your new person or your new relationship. Woo,
Big old red flag.
There's a flame on that flag. Like,
it's not just red, it's on fire.
It's on fire.
We do have some folks we know, Monique and Veronica, that are together in a relationship. And one of them just does not like the other one's friends. And it's so interesting to watch because instead of saying, hey, those aren't my people, but y'all go out and have a great time, Monique does not want Veronica to hang out with her friends. So it creates some tension, because then when Veronica wants to go out with her friends, Monique gets mad about it and pouts about it, and it just becomes kind of a shit show. So you got to be careful about that and just stake your claim right at the beginning that these are my friends. I'm going to go out with them. You're welcome to come if you want to, and you don't have to come. It's okay. So
yes, and I'm going to confirm that I have seen this happen over and over and over again, and it never, ever works. Never. It may bite you in the ass in a month. It may bite you in the ass, and I'm talking about the person on the side that is not allowing those friendships to take place. It may not bite you in the ass for 6 months. It may not even bite you in the ass for 3 years. But eventually, that other person is going to wake up and they're going to look out and go, where are my damn friends?
Yeah.
And those guys will be looking at you going, I haven't heard from you and we don't do anything anymore. Mm-hmm. And so I do feel I've actually witnessed this over and over and over again. It's never been successful.
No, it's not successful for either person, because the person who gave up their friends gets resentful, but it's actually not their partner's fault. Their partner's contributing to it. But you've got to be the one to maintain your friendships, to maintain your activities, maintain your autonomy. Even if your partner's not fully supportive, then you just evaluate, what does that mean to be with someone who's not supportive of your autonomy? But don't give it up, because you're going to regret it later.
100%.
Yep.
And kind of like that open relationship throuple thing where you've never seen it work. I've actually never seen it work. To
try to control someone else out of hanging out with their friends.
Mm-mm. I've never seen a success story behind it.
Nope. But if you have one, if you have controlled your partner out of hanging out with their friends, or if your partner has controlled you out of hanging out with your friends and it's working out, let us know, because we want to hear about it. The other thing that kind of goes along with this, not just friendships, but do you know people who get afraid to express their opinions or express their desires in their relationship?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a risky one too. If you don't feel comfortable speaking up about something, whether that would be, religion or political beliefs or nutritional beliefs or habits, or if you feel scared to speak up about something, that's a red flag, because that person's not accepting you for who you are, or you're afraid you're not going to be accepted for who you are. So you're making yourself smaller by not speaking up.
And the person on the other side of that, if you make I find that to be horrible, to be the person with the person that doesn't speak up. It's terrible. They're not making decisions. You don't really know how they feel about something. It's as if they have no will or autonomy. And so I think healthy people don't want that. They do not want you to put that responsibility in their lap.
Yes, that is absolutely true. I had a very close friend, Paolo, who passed away a number of years ago, but he was single and dating. He was a great guy. And in watching his dating experiences, he dated a young woman, significantly younger than he was, and his friends kind of freaked out about it. But she expanded his world in so many ways. And it was so fun because he was a guy who's kind of like me. He'd be home in bed at 9 o'clock. And this woman had him out dancing and going to clubs, and he was riding a motorcycle. Like, he was doing all these fun things that he had never done before. And you might look and say, wow, he was going through a midlife crisis. Maybe, but he was expanding his world. And he was having a great time. And conversely, after that relationship ended, he started dating someone else. And within weeks, the motorcycle went away. He was changing how his hair was cut. He was, not leaving the house. And it was like everything about that relationship made his world smaller. And I think this is just a really good thing to ask yourself is, does your partner expand your world or do they contract your world?
That's hilarious. And sadly, it's probably happens more often than we realize. But also, I do think that these things, I always want to bring this back around to dating because there are so many of these things that we've talked about today that you can experiment with when you're dating. Like Michelle Obama said, that you date enough, you experiment, you try these things on, see if this person, gives you that kind of autonomy, see if with them you can be your best self, you feel like your best self.
Yes.
Because if you get to the relationship, there is a point where you have a lot of other things that you're going to be grappling with in a long-term relationship. And it would be nice if it's not this one, but this sort of thing.
For sure. And these are things that you can recognize pretty early on. If you are in a relationship and you find that you've, perhaps strayed off the path a little bit, let's talk about some ways that you can reconnect with yourself. The first one that I would say is spending time by yourself is really, really crucial. Give yourself some solo time and make some space for activities that are just about you. Even if they're tiny activities, you're going to go on a walk around the block every evening by yourself. Create some time that you're doing things with just yourself.
I love that. And also revisiting your roots. So thinking about what lit you up when you were not before the relationship, and who were you when you felt most alive? And just think about those things, revisit that, and try to reconnect to those.
Yeah. And following kind of both of those lines is, rather than imagining merging closer to your partner, what would it be like to kind of reverse merge for a minute? That instead of merging deeper and getting deeper into couple activities, take some steps to differentiate yourself. Some things that you might try would be like, go on a solo trip, do solo therapy, find individual friends that you're not bringing your partner along to activities.
I gave myself a solo, non-talking 50th birthday gift to San Miguel. And it was one of the most influential, significant things that I've ever done for myself. It was amazing. And
sounds incredible.
Yeah, it was great. And then talking about communicating your growth, and that's the cool thing is, sharing this with your partner so that they get the advantage of your excitement and your journey and your zest and any new learnings and experiences.
Yeah, that even if it feels like rejection, it's actually just reconnecting with yourself. It has nothing to do with rejecting your partner or who they are.
Well, so what are our takeaways for the day, Dr. Kyle?
Well, I think the first thing I would want to say is that losing yourself in a relationship is definitely not inevitable. And even if you have experienced a little bit of that, it's fixable with some of the tips that we just gave you.
And I think growth doesn't mean outgrowing your partner. Honestly, it just means that you're probably adding some excitement into the partnership.
Yep. And that reconnecting with yourself actually strengthens the relationship. It doesn't take anything away from it, it makes it stronger.
And then just getting back to the things you love or getting on to something you will love.
Yes, absolutely. So, for our listeners, we would love to hear your comments about this. If you have found yourself getting lost in your relationship, let's talk about, send us your DMs, message us on Instagram or Facebook. Our Instagram handle is at DateableAF. You can also find us DateableAF on Facebook. But we want to hear, what is one thing that you've lost touch with that you would like to reclaim in your relationship?
And what can our listeners look forward to next Thursday?
So next week's episode, our topic is going to be age gap, same page, power, pace, and play when years divide you. So what is it like when you're dating someone who is in a different age category than you are?
Ooh.
I know.
Oh,
We got some things to say about this, y'all.
I'm scared of this topic.
Woo! I know you got to get out of the junior department. Just kidding.
Thank you.
All right. Well, as always, we want to thank you for listening to the Dateable AF podcast, where we help you find your happy ending.
Remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of queer dating, don't text your ex. Stay dateable.
AF.